Now we're going to have the wonderful panelist discussion, and I'm going to welcome our moderator for this, which is Öhrn.
Hello, everybody. Do you see me well? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just thinking it has been, so no break now, but I think it has been a long morning, afternoon, evening for some. So feel free to move yourself. If you have your headphones, please get up, up and down, stand up and sit, because now we are going to have this very interesting panel for about 40 minutes. We are going to try to do it very participatory. I can imagine it might not be that easy to just sit there for 3 hours just listening to us. So by saying that, I think that we have heard a few wordings or sentences this evening here in Sweden, but it might be morning in San Diego. So we have been saying women health is at a turning point. It remains underfunded, understudied, and it has also been a few examples in which they have shown to us that some diseases are very dependent on women genetics and hormones, while others don't. Okay, so I would love, by saying this, to please help you. You should help me welcome the speakers of this evening. I will actually ask them to tell your company and name. The reason for that is because you will notice that the names are not very easy to say. So I will just say the company, and the speaker, please tell the name. So we have today people from Diamyd Medical, the CEO.
Here I am. Do you hear me? Do you see me?
Yes.
And my name is Ulf Hannelius, and I have a
Ulf
new
Hannelius.
Zoom background as well.
Perfect. And from AFRY.
Yes, hello, I'm here. I'm not sure, can you see me? It just says that you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
I cannot see you.
Okay, it just says that the host has stopped it, so I don't know if the host has stopped the video. Start my video, perfect.
Now we can see you very well.
My name is Bergnéhr, and I'm a UX designer at AFRY and also the founder of AFRY's FemTech initiative. And I also have a new background.
Yes, I love it. I'm sorry, I am in the, oh my goodness. Well, we also have on the company Intelligyn from Sweden. And here we have with us who?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hayley McLaughlin, and I'm a part co-founder of Intelligyn, which is headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden, but I am based in the Bay Area in San Francisco.
Perfect. Welcome. I'm from the International Institute for Biosensing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Khashayar. I'm the director of International Institute for Biosensing in University of Minnesota in US in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And Patricia, I think you are going to be the first we are going to kind of interview later on, because you are leaving quite soon.
Yes, unfortunately, I have to leave.
And then we also have from the DeciBio consulting from the US. Did I say it right? DeciBio? DeciBio. Well.
Hi, DeciBio. I'm Mané, Mikayelyan, a senior manager strategy consultant. We are a precision medicine focused life sciences consulting firm. Based in New York, but we've got offices all over the globe. So
perfect. And then now, before we start with the panel discussion, we got the idea to try to get this to be very interactive. So let's see if the technique is with us today. So we have prepared a few polls and survey for the audience. And in order for us to test it, I have Maya and the technicians helping us. But we will start this panel, okay, by asking the audience, after all the presentations today and the things you knew before, which are the women health needs that you think are the most urgent? They have been mentioned, diabetes, menopause, mental health, etc. Which one of the ones on the poll you find it more urgent? It could also be based on your previous background or your current work. Let's see if it works. How is it going, Maya? Nobody has answered yet, I think. Does the participant have access to it? How is it going for you guys?
I can
Anybody
see
to say
lots of
something on the chat?
answers.
What I see 0 of 1 had answer. Do you see whether somebody has answered?
Yeah, I see lots of them.
That's fantastic. Okay, Maya, when you go to kind of 30 or something, 25 something, you let me know, and then we continue with the panel. Okay?
Yeah, I think we have around 15 answers right now.
So can you tell us a little bit, Maya? What was the most...
The most of them have voted for fertility and pregnancy health and also the precision medicine and diagnostics.
Okay, interesting. Very good. So, Patricia, if you can please tell us something about you, about your work, like some kind of a introduction, I would say, okay, to what we are going to discuss later. So, what is this institute? What are you doing, guys?
Okay, thank you. So, I'm a medical doctor by training, but in the past 15 years, I have been working on developing biosensors and point of care technologies and medical devices. And I feel like I'm a kind of like a medical doctor engineer in trying to bring the two worlds together and kind of like bridge the gap between the two. And here in the International Institute of Biosensing, actually, that's our goal. So we are not only bringing the clinicians and engineers together, we are also trying to make a collaborative national and international initiative who brings academia, government, industry, and nonprofits, all of them working in the field of biosensing kind of together to make a more impactful solutions for the global challenges. So we are not only working, so biosensing is a kind of misleading because most people would be thinking we are working only on health related, but actually here in IIB, we are working on human health, animal health, agriculture, and environment, all of them together because they are also kind of like affecting our health. So that's the context behind biosensing.
Thank
But
you
the
so much.
main,
Yeah, please go on.
sorry. So for the health perspective, what's I and therefore IIB is more interested on, we are focusing on multimorbidity and how there are some shared biomarkers between different diseases with specific actually attention to sex-specific diseases and the sex differences in molecular pathways and how multi-omic interactions and how actually like exposomic and environment is also affecting our health, because all of this would help us find new biomarkers and that would help develop new biosensors and diagnostic that would help with better diagnosis, earlier diagnosis, and at the same time for patient stratification and even like treatment monitoring. So the whole idea is to improve personalized and precision health.
Okay, so if you try to answer the first poll, just from your experience, in which disease do you see the biggest knowledge gap?
I'm actually going to say for all of them. So it's kind of like, so during the day, you have already heard about like how there are differences in like, because of the hormones, you see a lot of differences in some women-specific diseases. You also have heard about like how diabetes, autoimmune is also different between male and female. And it was also something about infectious diseases and asthma. I'm also going to say like, so we have been working on, for instance, cardiovascular diseases. And for cardiovascular diseases, it's like some parts you have the differences in the biomarkers. So there are differences in the levels of, for instance, CRP or lipid profile among men and women. It's also the difference between the presentation. So women go to the hospital later just because their presentation is different. They they actually experience subtle chest pain compared to men. And that's also one of the reasons that they go to the hospital later and they are misdiagnosed, and the heart attack is not diagnosed, and they have poorer outcome. And also something else that we are now currently working on is actually neurological diseases and mental health. So we know because of the differences in the brain structure, and also the levels of some hormones, for instance, serotonin and dopamine, the reaction and the mood and the susceptibility to certain diseases, mental and neurological diseases in men and women are different. So women are more prone to anxiety disorders. They are more prone to depression. They are more prone to dementia. And at the same time, for dementia, we know the process and the speed of dementia is faster in women. But we have also realized that, so we also know that women are more prone to osteoporosis. But fun fact, women who have dementia are at a higher risk of osteoporosis, and women who have osteoporosis are at a higher risk of dementia. So apparently we have it all.
If I ask you this in another way, according to your research and the data that you have seen, which are the most striking results? So in which, because I can imagine that not all diseases are affected in the same extent. So have you seen something that you saw, oh my goodness, if I knew it, if people knew this, you understand? Because there are certain diseases that we expect this kind of is it any that you think this was a
That's
case?
actually the dementia and the osteoporosis that I told you. We know dementia is more prevalent in women. We know osteoporosis is more prevalent in men. But the fact that women who have dementia are at a higher risk of osteoporosis and vice versa, that's actually something that is not happening in men. So in men who have dementia, the higher risk of osteoporosis is not commonly seen, and vice versa. And this is not because of the hormones, because we know many think osteoporosis is for women, but 1 in 3 women have osteoporosis and 1 in 5 men also have osteoporosis. So that's also something misjudged, because everyone considers osteoporosis as a women disease, which is not true. Men are also, after prostate cancer, osteoporosis is also quite common in men.
That's very interesting. And I now need to ask Ulf. Diamyd was the first company presenting. I don't know if everybody has had the opportunity to listen to you, but if you just very shortly summarize, tell us what is Diamyd doing. And also my question to you is, because at the end of the day, everything is about data, no? And about generation of knowledge. And we have agreed today that there is very little money being invested in women health research. So if you can just tell me shortly about Diamyd, what do you do? And my question is, do you think we have enough data about women's physiology in order to, get to any concrete, call it hypothesis, okay, or for this kind of personalized medicine approach?
Yeah. Well, briefly about Diamyd, and I will, after this panel, I will also give a short pitch. So if you just, those who can hang on, you will get a few slides as well, but not many. But Diamyd Medical, like you might have heard, we are focused on diabetes, and especially type 1 diabetes, the autoimmune form, where we develop therapeutics that go actually at the core of the disease-modifying therapies. So not treating the symptoms, but really treating the underlying disease in order to slow down disease progression, and in the best case, prevent that you ever get the clinical diagnosis. And we are now in the phase 3 trials, 1 year away from results that if there are good ones, then we can go for an accelerated approval in the US. And the purpose of the company really started, like you saw in the video, when the founder's youngest daughter got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So there's a very deep purpose in the company, really to cure the disease. So it goes way beyond the commercial interest. It's really there's a very true purpose here. when it comes to data, there's never enough data. I mean, data has been crucial for us because we were in phase 3 around soon 15 years ago, and then we didn't meet the primary endpoint. We didn't really know why. It actually looked, though, in certain analysis that it seems to work better in boys, and that was a strange finding. I mean, there's definitely could be a rationale why it works better in boys than in girls, exactly because of hormonal differences and these things, but it was still a bit of a difficult hypothesis to move ahead with. If should we only be developing drugs for males? I mean, it's a difficult decision to move ahead if that would have been true. But because we've had so much data, we were able to go back and reanalyze with a more of a genetic perspective, and we could actually see that when you adjust for the genetics, and in this case, these HLA genetics that are central for immunity, all that sort of difference between males and females disappeared. It's all about the genetics. And now we are in phase 3 with a precision medicine approach where we pre-screen for genetics and only select the responders based on their genetic profile. So data has been crucial.
I need to ask you a follow-up question that I haven't thought before. It's not prepared, but I was thinking, isn't it just a question that I just pop up? Isn't it more risky for a biotech company or a company to start doing, say, developing a drug for a women-related disease? Because if you take into account that it's very little data, I mean, as compared to support this kind of research, then the risk of failing because of not reaching the secondary endpoints, etc., is higher. So my question is, I haven't thought about it before, but I'm asking you, do you think that investors, when you come out and say, I am going to do something for diabetes, very much focused on women health or women related, do you think that they see that risk? You understand what I mean? And I also can let people in the chat comment, and the other speakers, if you have any feedback on it, please feel free.
Yeah, well, I think there's, I mean, as investors might think, I mean, you can start there, but depending on, I mean, usually if you can show that you have a platform, you start in a certain indication, you start very specific, hopefully that it's close to market and get it approved, and then you can show how you can broaden the label of the drug. But if it's from the very beginning very, very specific and limited, that might be a turnoff. If you can show that that very specific thing is still a huge market. So I think in the end it's about the commercial opportunity, likelihood of success. And if you are too limited and too specific, and if you fail, then there's no future maybe. But if you can show that this is partly testing the mechanism of the drug and a quick way to approval and a huge opportunity, and then you can broaden, I think that's the right way. But it could be, in the end, it's about the likelihood of succeeding and the commercial opportunity, I think.
I mean, during this time, you have met hundreds of investors. When you told the story about women health and the implications for women, did they see it as an additional unique selling point, as an additional value, or just as a nice to have?
Well, for us, it's the most important thing has been the precision medicine focus, that we learned from our data. We understood why the previous phase 3 failed and why this phase 3 hopefully should work this time, because we understand who we should be treating and who we shouldn't. The thing that there was this finding that it seems to work better in boys than in girls, that was kind of discussed, but I think we saw it as a company, and maybe as that's a difficult path forward to sell that to investors, that we are only now going to focus on treating boys. We don't care about the girls because it doesn't work there. That would have been, again, a very difficult kind of path forward. But then it's all about the genetics, and that's really been key. And now precision medicine is like, that's the, I think, recipe for success for most complex diseases out there. So that has been important. And then I think highlighting, like we've heard today, like that the disease, if you are a girl, if you get the diagnosis before the age of 10, you will have almost an 18-year shorter lifespan, and boys will around 14 years. So highlighting those differences and like really showing the problem we are trying to solve. I think that's really important, and also investors understand that.
Do you think that genetic predisposition should be used for pre-screening in diseases other than diabetes type 1, for instance?
Well, yeah, I mean, most diseases in the world, there are some monogenic diseases, obviously, but most diseases are complex, and genetics is maybe 50%, and then environment 50%. Some diseases are more than 50% genetic. So definitely, if you can screen, and if you get the whole genome sequencing, you will sit on such a massive resource of data that you can use in your clinical trials and adjusting your personalizing the treatment. So I think genetics should be used if possible always.
But still, it's not compulsory. So for many people, it's just going to be perhaps extra cost or more. So a question to you, Mané, because you are also working as consultant, correct? And with, I mean, you have a lot of, what is your, I'm also sure that you have been supporting biotech companies and other companies in the field. Do you think that these things with women health is something that investors are looking for, that people are, that can be now a new, I can say that can strengthen a company story in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a controversial opinion that funding in women's health across the board, for lack of a better word, sucks. So I don't know that I would say investors are looking for that necessarily. Investors care about one thing, and that's making money and profit. And so I think you have to ask yourself what's the business case for women's health, rather than it's great to have a personal story, but they're not going to invest because it's the right thing to do. Maybe if they're an impact-oriented investment firm, that can be the case, but where you really see deep expertise is those traditional biotech VCs, and they really are looking for more of a business case. I think there's increased innovation and funding for women's health. I've been a voice in this for many years now, and I think there's more focus on women's health. I see it coming up in industry conferences more. Investors ask me more about it than they did 3 or 4 years ago. So I think it's helping, but it's still underfunded. I don't know that it's the selling story, but I think when you say this is half the population and there's a huge unmet need and market opportunity and potential to make money, most importantly, that's where that starts to resonate.
Strong argument. Hayley, back to you. Can you just tell me a little bit, tell us about you and the company and how you are using AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Actually, I wanted to address what you're saying,
Yes,
Mané,
please
but
do it.
I can introduce myself first. So Intelligyn is a research spin-out from Karolinska Institute, actually. And our founder and CEO is a professor of gynecological imaging, working with ultrasound. And the problem that she was seeing was that so many women were coming to her after receiving multiple referrals for additional scans, tests, you name it. They've been waiting, many weeks, sometimes months. They're fraught with anxiety. They think they've got cancer. And, ovarian cancer, for instance, isn't super common. It has an incidence of 1% to 2%. But many of these women were being referred to her, a specialist, thinking that they have cancer. And we were seeing so much overdiagnosis and unnecessary interventions that Elizabeth was like, well, let's try and do something about this. So Intelligyn is actually trying to bridge the expertise gap in women's health, specifically gynecological imaging. And we have come at it from a holistic perspective. So we've built an integrated AI-driven decision support solution at the point of care. So this is something that is able to be returning a risk prediction to the clinician during the ultrasound examination and providing a patient management proposal. And we also come at it from an education platform perspective, so empowering clinicians through giving them the exposure to lots of different complex cases that they don't get to see on a daily basis, to try and, reduce misdiagnosis. And I think there's so many great points I want to touch on because but Patricia was talking about, osteoporosis and dementia and the links within women's health there specifically. And what we uncovered in our research around the business case was the number of women that were being sent to surgery that actually didn't require it. So in Sweden, that figure is up to like 25%. And talking to so many different stakeholders here in the US, that number can be as high as 90% of women having their ovaries removed that don't need to. And it all falls back to imaging because there's not enough precision in the diagnostic workup to really be clear. And, the answer is, well, let's go to surgery to find out. So we're really trying to tackle that and, hopefully allow women to keep their ovaries if they're able to. And hopefully we'll see some long-term benefits in terms of longevity and the fertility preservation.
Let me ask you, I am not very technical, okay? I will just interrupt you, but AI, I'm not technical at all, but just to ask you, AI is also very dependent on data to train, to all of that. So my question is, we have been saying that there is not so much data on, that is women health, women disease specific. And my question is, how do we make sure that we don't inherit biases from, past data, old data that is not really, the kind of data that we need to ensure this quality of AI trained?
Bias is a really big problem. And I have to say, we don't have all the answers to that. But what we've tried to do is really, frame our studies and all of our research proactively. And, I have to say it's just a constant work in progress. So with our models, we trained on a diverse data set, and we were able to do that because of Elizabeth, our founder's extensive research network. So our validation study was actually published in Nature Medicine at the beginning of this year. It's the largest study of its kind, proving the generalizability of the models. And when we come to looking at the data, we have been in touch with health systems here in the US, and the diversity in the data actually isn't there. This is why the Nordics are just so fantastic, because they're so organized with their data. It's unbelievable. It's an untapped resource. And
don't tell the Nordics, huh?
We've just been so fortunate with the support that we've had from Karolinska Institute and Karolinska Innovations as well, I have to say, because, one of the amazing benefits of the Nordics as well is this professor privilege or researcher privilege. So you get to hold on to your IP and, really own your research. And we have been supported all the way through to date, even though we're still not commercial. But I think bias is something you always have to be on the lookout for. In healthcare, it's really important that falls into, your post-market surveillance. But I think really building the framework from the outset around how you're going to deal with this, how you're going to audit it, and sort of have that automation already built from the outset is one way to really address it.
It is complex. We need to start early. Siri, can you please tell us who you are? What is AFRY? I don't know, because I was wondering, does AFRY also have offices in the US? Is it a known brand there?
Yes, actually, we are a global consultancy agency, and we have 19,000 employees, and we have offices in 42 countries. And yes, we are represented in the US. I am working there as a UX designer, and I'm also the founder of AFRY's FemTech initiative, because we realized about a year and a half ago that there is, as we have talked about today, there is a huge gap, not only within life science, but also when it comes to medtech development and also development of other things such as cars and stuff. And we work with our consultants towards clients all over the world globally. And if we teach our consultants, if we educate them about the gender gap, if we educate them that they need diverse testing groups, if we educate them that the men and the male body is not the norm in everything, if we make that, we can really make an impact.
So and I think, this is very connected to a question that was asked in the chat when Jennifer was talking. Somebody asked, what is the percent of or what is the focus on male diseases? And I was thinking the problem is actually that the male body has been used as the standard for
Exactly.
all research. You understand? So there is
I
not a
understand
normal
100%.
and
And I think
man and
that's
a
the tricky
woman.
part,
It's the men
because
that
it's
is
not,
the standard.
yeah, it is not only that it's biased towards the male body and that we sort of neglect women. It's then when we talk about unisex, for example, then it's still male. So that's an issue. So there's like no room at all for women. It's this tiny little piece. And that is something that we really need to focus on, and we need to be aware. It's nobody's fault that we're in this situation, but we need to really open our eyes and see that it is extremely biased as of today. And it comes to technological tools and surgical instruments and everything that we talk about.
Okay, I need to ask you. So we have been talking about access to women health-related data, but another aspect is who is the designer? And now Hayley happens to be a woman working with AI, but do you think that the fact that men are behind most of the tech AI developments, that this can be a problem when developing women health products?
I mean, I think we've seen historically like a lot of innovations that have been driven by, male or predominantly male only teams. But I think what's great is that we have a conversation now and a lot of data supporting how important diversity is amongst different teams. Speaking from experience within ultrasound, the transvaginal transducer, for instance, and many of the transducers we've used historically have been very heavy, and the handle has been very large. And that has been in due part to, back in the day when the majority of OB-GYNs were actually male, and that's not the case now. 85%, I think, of OB-GYNs are now female. So, it's recognizing changes in workforce dynamics as well. And I think BCG also had a report about how much increased innovation revenue can be achieved by having diverse teams building solutions. So I think it's a problem that we have recognized. I think that many companies and many startups absolutely are trying to reconcile.
Mané,
go on, Siri, please. I said, Hayley, that we start the conversation, because we need to be aware that this is a fact. And if we're not, we can't change anything at all. So slowly, step by step, we can make these adjustments and alter. Because like you say, also because it's like Jennifer said, it's so easy. If you're a woman, you're aware of the difficulties you meet every single day. So of course you will be a bit more maybe interested in solving them. That's just easy.
And it comes back to women's health in general, right? I mean, when we haven't been discussing a lot of the problems that we do suffer our day-to-day challenges as women, men don't know that we're having these challenges until we start talking about it. And then once they know, then it's like, okay, now we can do something about this. So I think this is really part of the solution is, making sure the conversations are being had and that we're sharing our experiences.
Yes, indeed, true. Mané, you have many clients. Do you see any, you have been listening to Öhrn, to Hayley, to Siri. Do you see any differences in the way women health solutions, digital health solutions, or FemTech solutions can scale up in the US versus Europe? Is it better here? Is it faster here? Is this more, I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on what aspect of scaling you're talking about. And it really depends on a few things like the market you're going after, the regulatory landscape that's relevant, and the availability of funding. But I think there's sort of advantages and disadvantages to commercialization in both countries. Obviously, in Sweden, it could be easier to pilot innovations. And, to Hayley's point, there's easier access to very well organized, rich, comprehensive data. Those academic researchers happy to partner. Not to say that we don't have that here as well, but the system is much more fragmented in the US, whether that's the healthcare systems themselves, the payers, regulatory bodies. And so that makes it a more difficult environment to navigate. And there's also more competition in the US. And so, it might be easier to pilot things in Sweden, still a smaller
And
market
scale in the US
overall.
where it's much more funding. Which is also Ulf, perhaps you are a clear example, know that you develop, do a lot of it R&D in Sweden, but in the latest stages, you actually focus on the SOUS market because it's where the ESO money is, where the market size is, where the FTA and the regulators are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, partly it's for any biotech today. It's and pharma. The U.S. market is by far the biggest. 60 to 80% of everything you will make in the U.S. So if you're not in the U.S., you are sort of doing something wrong. So that's why you need to focus on that one. And then we've also had great success with the FDA, especially during 2024 when we received fast track designation and we got the thumbs up to go for an accelerated approval pathway. So now, suddenly, like the FDA has been even more positive than the EMA has been. So we are in both, like the trial is ongoing in Europe and the US, but the FDA has actually given us the fast track. So that's why we're focusing there. But I want to come back to the data part and also like Sweden, Nordics, and Europe maybe, because I completely agree with, now the large language models, they are trained on everything out there, but it's very biased data, not only from this like a sex perspective, it's also biased. It's been discussed in the research field that there's this it's called like the Monte Carlo effect. Like you mostly publish the positive findings and the negative findings are never published. So they are very biased like this. So when you start asking them questions, you have to understand that it only uses examples from more positive bias, but also from a more maybe male perspective. So there's definitely, I think, opportunities to develop smaller language models based on much more generalized and unbiased data, because these large language models, they are fantastic, and it's a race to reach this general intelligence, who knows what happens then, but they are still biased. So I think we can focus on like using, for example, Swedish registry data or Finnish registry data and creating small, very specific language models that are unbiased and that can answer better, more specific questions in a better way.
This is a long journey. Let's see if the audience is still with us. We have a new poll for the audience because we need to keep you guys warm here and engaged in some way. So we have one more question. And we have been talking about AI, data, etc. And the question for the audience is, what is the, let me see what good. What is the biggest concern about AI in women's health? And then you please choose one because it's the biggest. Data bias, lack of regulation, over-reliance on AI, and the opportunities, limited trust from patients or doctors. That's something we haven't discussed, but we could, or other. How's it going, Maya?
We have 8 answers right now.
Data.
Leading is data bias, male focus training data.
It's interesting with the lack of regulation because I'm thinking in Europe and Sweden, just this with the data and the European Health Data Space and the AI Act and everything that is going on there is like regulation is everywhere. But perhaps in the US, you are more permissive. I don't know, anybody that would like to comment on
I think
regulation? Yeah.
the FDA is still somewhat lagging in developing the frameworks necessary for AI to be appropriately implemented into healthcare. So I think I can't comment as to if it's faster or slower than in Sweden, but I think AI is evolving faster than regulations can keep up. That being said, in the US, for better or worse, the political climate has now made AI a bigger focus, more funding and investment going there. And so I don't know what will happen with the government, but that could make it so that that's a more permissive environment or a more greater focus on AI in regulation.
What do you think, Siri? Because I mean, in Sweden every day it's just European Health Space, AI Act, regulation. People is complaining about that it is too much, even though we see the need from a patient point of view. But Siri, what do you think about regulation in Europe in the space?
In the AI space, I mean, I think it's that is not my absolute area of expertise, but like you said, Mané, it's AI is developing much faster than we can ever keep up with, and there is a absolute problem with it being so biased, so that the results that we get can maybe not be really trusted, and we sort of just walking around in the same circles as we did before, even though the technology itself is, of course, extremely fascinating, can be very, very helpful. But I think it is a very, very tricky area.
I will do something now. I would dare to do something. I don't know whether I should, but I would do as following. Jennifer, you put something on the chat. You are on our part of the Zoom. Do you want to comment on it? I think you are on this part. Jennifer is on this.
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Siri. I was having pasta.
Oh, no.
Can you comment on the data
Pasta and
AI
wine.
regulation aspect that you put on the chat? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you mean about AI?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that, healthcare in Sweden is extremely skeptical towards transforming and integrating with new technology, and it's all a question about data integrity and security and all that, and it's just a big fat stopper of change. But I also know, on the other hand, that doctors use ChatGPT and other open AIs daily to help them. Like, for example, in psychiatry, if you have an emergency case, the journals can be 800 pages on a patient like that, and you can't in 5 minutes like access that information into your brain to assess the patient. You know what I mean? So they are very, very low on resources and have absolutely no technology. And this will force AI into healthcare because they have to make it secure medically.
Yeah. I have a question that I will, Jennifer, this is one more question I will ask to you, because I also would like to ask it to Hayley and Ulf. And, when companies are developing women health innovations, could be specific drugs or digital health, medtech, etc., they are always thinking, should they contact traditional VCs, looking just about return of investment and the business case as we have talked about, or should they contact more impact investors? This is just a question because I know there are so many companies there developing that don't really know which door to knock. Hayley, what do you do in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I could turn back the clock, I wouldn't have spent as much time as we did reaching out to many of the VCs or angel investors we were actually put in contact with. And we've predominantly focused on the Nordics. So in my experience, we pitched for months on end, which was really tough for my co-founder Elizabeth, because of course she's working clinically during the day and we're pitching after she finishes work. And I think, Iris, you mentioned way back in your earlier presentation about the importance of public funding and just how significant that has been, especially out of Sweden. And this has kept us going. So I found that most of the VCs that we spoke to were really just, I call them FemTech tourists. They have no desire. They call themselves, early stage investors. It's okay if you're pre-revenue, but it's not the case. And so my advice to any founders out there is really to focus on finding the non-dilutive capital through all the different research funding opportunities that exist out there. We've just applied for the European Innovation Council grant, so we've just submitted our proposal. It takes so much time, and of course, fantastic experience. You learn to answer a lot of difficult questions, But the money, I have to say, is it's not there if you don't have revenue to back everything up that you're doing.
It is true. I think we need to wrap up. It has been, it felt like a very short time. Very interesting. I actually had a battery of like 40 questions. I think that we got to this course, I don't know, 10 or so, but it was super interesting. And I will thank everybody in the panel, in the audience for today. A lot of knowledge exchange. And I just want to end this by saying, just think about what will you do in order to contribute anything? Because I think if everybody do something, perhaps we might not need to wait one more millennia, but perhaps only 200 years to advance this. Hopefully 200 years. Okay.
No.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I now pass the words to Swedish to Zach.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you for that
Thank
wonderful
you so much.
moderating and the dynamic conversation. And I agree that it's important that all of us do something to raise this awareness and actually take action. So I really, really appreciate all the insights from the panelists and good moderating. And I